Step number one, you have to decide what you want. Now that sounds so obvious, but so many people go through life not being really clear about what their goals are, what their vision is, what their dream is. I want you to have a big vision, a big vision. I want you to go for everything it is you want in life and to get in touch with that from your heart. See, we were told, a lot of us, you can't have that, you can't do this. Forget all that. If none of that mattered and anything was possible, what would you want? So one of the phrases I have is ask what, not how. Because many of you don't know how you're going to get it. What I'm going to teach you here is if you'll make the commitment and do these other steps that we're going to talk about, the how will show up along the way. See, in my ideal vision, there's no drive-by shootings in Los Angeles. In my ideal community world, there's no hunger. There's no illiteracy. There are no gangs. People say, oh, that's impossible. Well, it's only possible if we start to visualize it and decide this is what we want. And once we commit to it, as I said, the how will show up. Are there any accomplishments you want to have before you die? Maybe you want to get that PhD, want to write a book or publish a letter to the editor in the newspaper or make that trip around the world, whatever it is for you. Now, don't let your mind tell you it's not possible. I want the inner child in you, you know, the one that says, come on, mommy, I want to buy that, okay? I want the little kid in there that thinks anything is possible to decide what you want. And the spiritual part of this comes in, I believe, that in your heart, you really know what's for your highest good. This is not about your ego needs. It's about what you really need to do to feel fulfilled, to feel filled full of yourself. And if you'll go there and trust yourself, then you get a level of satisfaction you can't believe. The last part of this is you got to tell other people what your vision is. As you start to share your vision and your dreams with others, some people are going to go, I have that same dream. Martin Luther King stood up and said, I have a dream. A lot of other people went, hey, I share that dream. Let me line up. I'll march with you. And eventually something started to happen in terms of fighting racism in our culture. But it had to be someone that stood up so other people could attract to it. And you'll be surprised who will become attracted to your dream. The second step to success that's so critical is you've got to set specific goals and objectives for your vision or your dream. It's a nice thing to say, I want a winter home in Hawaii. But that won't do it. It's got to be measurable. It's got to be in time and space. How much do you want and by when? Do you have a blueprint for your life? And if not, why not? Let's look at this idea of specificity for a minute. Like a winter home in Hawaii. Very nice. But if I say, I will own a 2-bedroom beachfront villa on the west coast of Maui, Hawaii by June 1st, 2003, does that sound a little more clear? Yeah. And until you get specific like that, the creative part of your brain won't jump in and decide how to help you get there. And that's why a lot of people never get their dreams, because they don't make them specific enough. You got to get real nitty-gritty. Break it down. How much by when? I want a better relationship with my husband. Well, what does that mean? But if I say I want to spend an hour a week sitting opposite my husband talking about real things that matter, no TV on, eye-to-eye communication. Now that we can measure. Did you do it for an hour? Want to have more fun? What does that mean? Well, what if I say I'm going to listen to comedy albums twice a week for a minimum of an hour? You're probably going to have more fun. So make it specific. Make it real. I told you earlier in the program, we said we're going to sell 1.5 million books in 1.5 years, and that directed our behavior. Recently, we just said we're going to sell 1 million books in one day. We had 101 bookstores involved in a book signing. We're going to try to be in the Guinness Book of World Record for the largest book signing ever done. Now, I don't think we sold 1 million books. Maybe we sold a couple 100,000. But by holding that question and trying to figure out how to do it, it moved us toward that goal. Now, maybe it'll take us 2 years to figure out how to sell 1 million books in one day. But it gets the thinking to expand out into that arena. Is this making sense? Okay, so you want to have those goals. Now, the other thing you want to do is break your goals down. When you first look at it, it's kind of overwhelming. But what if we were to break that down into little steps? It says, okay, I want to go to college and get a PhD. Gosh, I'm only a high school student. But the next step would be finish the math class, get an A in this, write for a brochure from a college, get a catalog, pick 1 or 5 colleges that I want to apply to. You know, just keep breaking it down to little steps and then figure out how to get all those steps done and put a date by each step and then start doing the plan. Someone said if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. One of my friends said, success by the yard is hard, by the inch it's a cinch. So we just break it down into small pieces. Anything can be done if you break it down small enough. So don't let the bigness of a goal overwhelm you. If you set a big goal, 3 things are going to show up in your life. One is called considerations, all the thoughts about why it's not possible, all the fears that you have about going out there and doing that thing. There are real roadblocks out there in the world. And you're going to have to learn how to overcome those roadblocks and to learn how to quiet the considerations in your head and learn how to overcome those fears. But have you ever done something that was really scary, and then the next time you did it, it wasn't quite so scary, and then the third time wasn't, and pretty soon it's no big deal? Like the first time I did TV, it was scary. Now it's not such a big deal. But you have to go through it. And when you're done, you get to have something in your life called mastery. And that's the goal. The goal is mastery. Mastering your fears, mastering your thoughts, mastering your behaviors so that you can do anything you want. That can't be taken away from you. A friend of mine's house burnt down. He was an author. He lost all his manuscripts, all his research, his computer melted, everything. Nothing was safe. And you would have thought maybe he'd have committed suicide at that point, but he didn't. What did he do? He said, look, everything I learned about being an author is still in my head. You can't take that away from me. I know how to talk to editors. I know how to write. I know how to outline. I know how to write book proposals. I know how to go on talk shows. I'm no longer afraid of that. So what you want to do is create goals that are so big and so full of your heart that when you achieve them, even if you lose the result, the best-selling book, they always fall off the bestseller list. My publisher over here will tell you that. They just don't stay on there forever. But the reality is you become a master in life. Now, step 3 is you've got to visualize the results that you want. This is probably the most important step of all the 6 steps. What does that mean? You've all heard people say, visualize the goal as if it's already achieved. Think about this. Have you ever known a kid, like a high school kid, he's into skateboarding or something, and you go into his room and the whole wall is covered with pictures of skateboarding? It's like he's surrounding himself with this image of what he wants. People say, I can see it so bad I can taste it. You ever heard that phrase? Yeah. Well, they literally can see it. And because they can see it, it creates something inside of them that moves them toward the goal. Do you think some people see more resources out in the world than you do? More solutions to problems? More entrepreneurial opportunities than maybe you do? More people that look friendly they could get a hug from? More money that's available for loan? See, everything's out there. All the solutions to your problems exist, but we don't see them. And partially we don't see them because we've never learned this concept of how to get our brain to open up and let this reticular system in the back let that information in. Do you ever drive down a street and notice a house and go, where'd that come from? And your husband or wife goes, honey, that's been there for 3 months, you know? And literally you just didn't see it. It was like a blind spot. But what happens when you learn this technique, all of a sudden you start seeing more. 1983, the Australian sailing team had never won an America's Cup, ever. And the coach had a new idea. He said, let's try this visualization stuff. And he made a tape. And on this tape, he did a narration of the Australian team beating the American team. And it was something like, you know, we're going around the last buoy, we're 3 boat lengths ahead of the Americans. And they had all the sound effects in the background, the wind and the sails and the water going by and the little lines hitting the mast and all that stuff that you associate with that. And this tape went on for about 20 minutes. It was a little faster than the actual race. And they would imagine beating the Americans. Now, he made the team listen to this tape every day, twice a day, for 3 years. Someone just said, oh my gosh. Now, when they finally went to race the Americans, it was like, not them again? How many times do we have to beat these guys? It was like, of course we can beat the Americans. Their whole attitude was totally different. And in fact, they came in and they won the America's Cup. So the idea is that you can use this in any aspect of your life, whether it's sports, whether it's, you know, losing weight, whether it's getting better grades in school, learning to read, whatever. So step number 4 is what? Take action. Take action. One of my favorite quotes is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He said, the heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they while their companions slept were toiling upward in the night. What does that mean? You got to work. You got to do some doing this. You can't just sit around and hope it'll happen. One of the steps, one of the actions you need to take is called asking. And many of us, see, we wrote a book, Mark and I wrote a book called Dare to Win. And it was a book of all these kind of things, and people went out and they read the book, and still a lot of people weren't successful. And we thought, what's the problem here? And as we began to analyze and interview people, we realized one of the main things that was blocking most people was the fear of asking for what they wanted. They wouldn't go up and just say, can I borrow money? Will you support my dream? Will you volunteer for school? Will you lend me your car? Whatever it is they need, they were so afraid of being rejected. If you ask enough people, eventually someone's going to say yes. If I asked everyone in this room, do you have a red car? Eventually someone would say yes. It doesn't matter. If you ask enough people, you're going to get your dream. When someone says no to you, what I want you to say to yourself real loud inside your head is the word next. Ask somebody else. Absolutely. How many people live on the planet? 5 billion people. Someone wants to do what you want to do. Someone wants to get involved in your dreams. Someone wants to support you. You might have to ask a lot of people. Remember, ask, 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 ask. So when they say no, you say next. And here's another clue most people don't realize. If you ask somebody and they say no, does that mean you can never come back and ask them again? No. Little kids are so good at it. Mommy, can I go to the store with you? No. Oh, come on, Mom, please let me go to the store with you. They go away. Mom, you are going to let me go to the store with you. And they wear you down, you know. So that's another thing you can, next time can be, right? So don't let no stop you. No just means get creative, get going. Now, what stops people from asking? What stops people from doing? It's something called fear. We're all afraid. We're afraid we're going to look stupid. We're afraid we're going to get rejected. I love this person who did the acronym FEAR. It stands for fantasized experiences appearing real, or false evidence appearing real. Because when you close your eyes and you fantasize something like you're not going to be able to pay your bills, or they're going to take your house, or you're going to flunk out of school, then your body reacts like it's real. I was flying to Orlando in a plane not too long ago, and this woman was sitting next to me, and as we took off, she started like lifting herself out of the seat. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm making myself lighter so the plane will take off. Now, I knew we'd had a failure in American physics education, right? And I also noticed her knuckles were all white, and I said, are you a little afraid? She says, yeah, I guess I am. I said, well, we're headed to Orlando. I guess that's where I'm going. You're going? She says, yeah. I said, where are you going down there? So I'm going to Disney World to visit my children. They're going to be there, and my grandchildren. I said, well, close your eyes for a second. Indulge me. I'm a psychologist. She said, okay. So she closed her eyes. I said, what are you imagining right now? She said, well, I see the plane blowing up in a fireball at the end of the runway. I said, well, no wonder you're scared. You know, this would make anyone crazy. And so then I had her close her eyes and imagine being at Disney World. And I said, what's your favorite attraction? She said, it's a small world. So I said, imagine you're in the little thing and you're going through It's a Small World, and all the little people are dancing and singing. I actually started going, it's a small world anyway. Da, da, da. And all of a sudden she relaxed, her breathing deepened. And this was what was so powerful. Nothing outside of her had changed. We're on the same plane, going down the same runway. But what she changed was her response. She started visualizing a positive outcome rather than a negative outcome. And her physiology reacted. Same thing we've been talking about all along. Now let's look at this fear. The biggest fear I think that stops most people from asking is the fear of what? Rejection. So if I apply to Harvard and don't get in, wasn't in Harvard before I applied, I'm not in Harvard after I applied. And most of you have spent your whole life not going to Harvard and survived just fine, right? So it's not a big deal. I worked for a optical company that makes lenses. Half the lenses in your glasses, they have 50% of the market, so half of you are wearing them. And I was the first guy that ever brought in as an outside speaker for their sales meetings. And I got there early in the day, and I went out, and there were some guys golfing and stuff. And I went up to people and I said, do you know who the top 2 or 3 performers in the company are? And they'd all go, oh yeah, it's Bob and Mary and Joe. And I said, well, great. Well, that night I went into the groups, about 300 people, and I said, do you all know who the top 3 performers in the company are? And everyone said, oh yeah, it's Bob, Mary, and Joe. I said, so you all know who's like selling many, many, many millions of dollars more than you are? And they went, oh yeah. I said, now, by show of hands, how many of you have ever gone up to them and asked them to show you what they do to sell so much? You know, not one hand went up in that room with 300 people. Isn't it interesting? They knew who had the information, but they wouldn't ask them. I said, well, why don't you ask? Well, they might not tell me. I say, well, you already don't know. So if they don't tell you, you still don't know. How'd it get so bad? You know, it's not so bad. But they were so afraid that they might say, oh, you're stupid, I don't want to share with you. And what I found, and I think most of you have probably found too if you test it out, most people are willing to share what they know. They like to teach, they like to share, they like to be a mentor. Not everyone will, but if they say no, what are you going to say? Next, there's lots of top performers out there you can go to. We've got to get over this fear of rejection. Don't let it stop you. It's not a big deal. Just keep asking the questions. Ask, ask, ask. Say next. Move on. Nothing happens if you're rejected. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, fear, stopping us. You're going to feel fear. It's going to show up. So what? Most people let fear stop them. They say, well, obviously, then I shouldn't do this thing. I'm going to say to you, feel the fear and pretend it's like a 2-year-old. Take the 2-year-old with you. You know, it doesn't want to go certain places, first day of school. So what? Take it. You're the adult. Treat your fear like a little child. But don't let it run you. You're bigger than that. You're bigger than that. The mastery comes from what? Handling the fear. Step 5, which says respond to feedback. See, when you take a first action, is that necessarily going to be the right one? No. But you can't get feedback unless you take the action. And some of us are so afraid of doing the wrong thing, we wait until like 18 doves fly over our house in the sign of a cross. Oh, it must be the ideal auspicious day, and then we take action. Well, they don't fly over that way too often, right? So we just have to take an action and see what happens. Now, there's 2 kinds of feedback. What are they? Positive and negative. Which one do you like best? Positive. Right. Positive feels good, right? You know you're on track. But have you ever had negative feedback and it was valuable? Yeah. Right. So there's 2 kinds. Now, how many of you actively solicit feedback in your life? You say, hey, I want feedback on how to be a better parent or a better teacher, or how can I be a better salesperson? How can we serve your company better? Right? Most people don't ask for feedback. Why don't they ask? They don't want to hear it. But let's say you're a teacher in school and you don't ask feedback. How I can be a better teacher. The kids go home. Do you think they're talking about how you can be a better teacher? Oh, man, that teacher, she doesn't let us do this, and she's so mean, and yada, yada. Well, everyone in town knows but you. Everyone's talking about it. You're the only one not in on the secret. So it's very important to ask for feedback. So the key here is to what? Ask for feedback, and when you get it, listen to it, then correct, and keep moving toward your target. Step number 6, the last step. Perseverance. Keep on keeping on. Never give up. Never give up. If you've got a goal that's important in your heart, don't give up. As I said earlier, we would have self-published our book if no one else would have published it. You got to have that kind of commitment to your goals. You may not know this, but the average millionaire in America goes bankrupt 3.5 times before they become a millionaire. I don't know how you go bankrupt a half a time, but you can do that statistically. Walt Disney went bankrupt 5 times. Henry Ford went bankrupt 3 times. Remember, we did Chicken Soup for the Soul. 133 publishers said no. When they did, the guy that wrote the book MASH, that became the TV show, it took him 7 years. He was a high school teacher. He wrote at night. Remember, persevere, a little bit every time. Break it down. Every night he wrote. What happened? Turned down by 18 publishers until Morrow bought the book. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, turned down by 19 publishers. Louis L'Amour, the great author, has 200 books in print. Got 300 rejections before he ever sold a piece of writing. Alex Haley, who wrote Roots, got a rejection slip every week for 4 years. 200 rejections before he sold his first piece of writing. See, it takes perseverance. Fred Astaire goes in for his first screen test. What do they say? Can't act. Bald. Dances a little. He had that framed in his living room after he went on to become what? One of the greatest dancing actors, singers we've ever seen in their history. You don't let other people determine. You persevere. You hang in there. So if you'll make your dreams a priority, and if you'll surround yourself with positive people, if you take 100% responsibility for your life and decide exactly what you want, and set specific goals and objectives, and visualize your goals as already completed, take massive and repeated action and respond to feedback, make corrections, on course, off course, never give up, and I promise you, you'll start to live an amazing life full of dreams come true.